Welcome to ARW. I'm Harold, and lately I've been doing these DRO videos, and I had the one where we were doing the smooth radius. Well, I didn't do the smooth radius, I did the simple R, as they call it, simple radius, and I had to choose, instead of number 4, which turned the direction my radius went, I had to choose number 1 to get it to go in the right direction. And so, you know, of course, there were some of the viewers suggested something wasn't adjusted right, and of course, you know, I gave it a lot of thought and inspection, and I came back and I tinkered with the DRO even more, which, you know, I've encouraged you to do, tinker with it, and I discovered that yes, the X needed to be reversed, and I'll show you you know, what I'm talking about. And I'll make a couple of excuses and such, you know, like when I got the mill, the X-axis DRO glass, you know, the glass scale was broken, and so I replaced it with one that Precision Matthews supplied for me, and I think I put it on backwards. Yeah, you know, us rednecks can do that kind of thing, and so, you know, which way the thing's pointing is going to determine how it reads. And I'll give you an example. This is a DRO glass. You see it's got the little scanner part on the bottom here that reads it. Now then, this guy is set up to know that if it sees signal coming this way first, it's, you know, it knows it's going that way, and it knows when it's going that way. But suppose I mounted this thing turned around like this. Okay, now then what it thought was getting positive, maybe was going this way, is going the other way now. And this guy, he looks the same either direction. If you look at him, he's pretty much the same in either direction, so you can screw him on facing either way. And I think that's what I did. But luckily, inside the display part of the DRO, you can reverse that and make up for it. I didn't even have to take it off the table. That wasn't off of this machine. That was one from way back when I had a DRO display go bad on me. So anyway, and these things are not necessarily interchangeable from one brand to the other, and the suppliers of them, I think they're just drop shipping stuff they buy from the factory, because they never know anything about it, you know. Of course, sometimes you get a redneck doing DRO videos, and he doesn't know anything about it either. So I'm going to show you how I think things work, and, you know, we'll complete all my excuses, and you'll know what I'm talking about, maybe. Okay, so I've drawn it out on this piece of artificial metal. You've got 4 zones here for considering your axis. If this right here is 0, 0, then this way, whoops, look at it here, this way is y plus and x plus. This way is x minus, y minus over here. This one down here is x plus, y minus, and this one over here is x minus, y minus. That makes sense, I hope. So I think if you can imagine, don't figure where the x and minus should be based on which way the table is moving on your DRO. Do it based on which way, say that your mill spindle, consider it the thing that's moving, alright? It's moving, and so that's the guy that you figure the motion from. You can imagine, just like in CNC machining, this down here, this bottom edge, this is x0, y0 normally. So all of this stuff up here, positive x and positive y, okay? And if you use your back jaw of the vise to mark x0, y0, then you're always going to be starting up here, you know? You'll be starting here, and things are going to be really kind of confused, alright? I would say give up on using that. Use the bottom left corner of your object you're going to machine. Let that be 0, 0. Just edge find it every time. It's worth it. So in solving that problem, I went back into the setup on this thing, and getting into the setup on this one, while it's self-testing, you punch the period, and this tells you what type of scale you've got. It's linear instead of a rotary or whatever. So, and resolution and so on. But what we come down to here is the XYZ direction. As you'll see, I've got a 1 in the X and zeros in the others. Once I did that, and then I went back and tried making my number 4 radius, it worked just right. Actually, I watched Quinn Dunkey over on Blondie Hacks, and she did most of my videos in about 15 minutes, one 15-minute video. So, yeah, what the heck. Okay, so my dry run on the pocketing, I told it that this was X0, Y0 down here, and it had me move over to the center part there. That was the first spot. Move to here, 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 up here, across, down here, over here, up, across, down, and back. And then it had me go all the way around that outside perimeter twice to get the outside perimeter squared away. So then I knew I was set up right to use it. Now we'll make an actual pocket with this thing with the same sort of dimensions. Alright, so like I said, the lower left corner of my workpiece is where I've set X0 and Y0. Now then we're going to, for the chambering operation, my DRO says to hit this cosine N1 symbol, and first thing it says is it going to be a flat XY. You could have XZ, YZ, or XY. Alright? Different planes of operation. So that's good enough. We're going to use that. The diameter of our tool is that same router bit. It's 3/8 of an inch. So we've got that in there. Now the center position of this thing is I'm going to make a pocket or a chamber that is 2 inches by 2 inches. So the center position would be 1 inch in the Y and 1 inch in the X. Okay? Alright, the size of it is 2 inches by 2 inches. And then we go to number 1. And number 1 wants us to go to 0, which all these functions, of course, to get the right position, you go to 0. And I went up past 0. And we get the other guy here, we'll get him down to 0, maybe. Now I'm probably going to make a few dumb moves, because I have a habit of forgetting which way to go on these things. But we'll get it to 0 here. Okay, so we will take the router bit. We're on number 1 location, and the router bit is right there. And we will shove it in about 1/4 of an inch, and we'll leave it in there as we make all these moves. And I'm a little uncertain each time as which way to move to go where I want to go, but hopefully it won't matter that much if I get out of the line a little bit until we get all the way to the last circle around the hole anyway. So hopefully it'll come out just right. Let's take a look. Alright, that ought to be about right. I don't know what we're going to do with the big pile of chips. So we move around here and see where number 2 is. Alright, number 2. We got to take that down to 0. Oh, and I'm using a real collet this time. As you can see there's no drill chuck. It's a real collet. Alright. Now we got to go to number 3. Alright, now number 3 is to move this other fella here. But we're still inside the middle. Alright, I'll pause the camera a second and blow the chips off. As you can see, the chamber's already being formed right there. Now there's like 19 or 20 steps in this. And I know you're not going to want to watch them all. So I'm going to turn off the camera, get up close to the end, and then bring you back. Closing in on the end of it. Now this being artificial metal, moving against the grain on the x-axis has, knock chips out like this. But hopefully it won't do it when we get down to the end. And it's over. "21 steps, huh? More than I had thought, but let me vacuum out our chamber. Right at the last, this guy traversed all the edges 2 times. And here you can see there's our chamber. It looks pretty good, huh? Now if that was in another type of metal like aluminum or steel or aluminium, it would really look nice, wouldn't it? Now if you wanted sharper corners, you got to use a much smaller drill router bit or end mill. I guess if you were cutting aluminum you could get by with a router bit, but for steel you better be using an end mill. Alright, we did it, so let's go see what Bubba's doing. Oh, on the Simple R video, I'd used the number 1 pattern instead of the number 4 to get the number 4 movement. And I admitted I just tinkered around till it worked out that way, because I didn't know about the reverse x-axis. Okay, so you guys tell me down in the comments where you think I ought to go back and edit that to include that information, or just hope everybody watches the whole series and finds out. Alright, now let's go see about Bubba. Well, it seems that Ole and Sven woke up one morning and they were down in hell, and so they were kind of surprised. The devil come along and checked on them, and they were sitting there in their, parkas and their big heavy hats and all this, and mittens, and sitting there, and they'd made a little fire and they were warming their hands, and the devil says, "Oh, what's the matter with you guys?" He says, isn't it too hot for you?" And so Sven says, "Well, we're from northern Minnesota, the land of ice and snow and cold. We're just happy for the chance to warm up a bit, don't you know?" So that irritates the heck out of the devil, and he's thinking about it. And the next day he goes in and he turns the heat up extra high, and goes in there, and they're still there, doing the same thing. They got a fire and they're warming their hands. And he says, "Don't you guys feel just a little bit uncomfortable?" And Ole says, "No, we're from northern Minnesota, where it's the land of ice and snow and cold." He says, "We're just happy to have a chance to warm up a little." Oh, that just drives the devil, up the wall. So he goes down and he turns the heat all the way up to the maximum, and all the people in hell are just screaming and tearing up the things. They're just miserable as everything, suffer something awful. He goes back in there to see Ole and Sven, and they're sitting there in short sleeve shirts, and they're roasting some fish over a fire and drinking beer. And the devil, he says, "What?" He says, just what in the heck is this now?" And Ole says, "Oh," he says, "we're from northern Minnesota, the land of ice and cold and snow." He says, "And when the weather turns up nice and warm like this," he says, "we like to cook some fish and have some beer." And that just drives the devil completely nuts. He just almost goes wild. He's so mad he can't see straight. So he goes back to his office and thinks on it some, and he figured, "I know what I'll do," and he just turns the heat completely off. So the next morning when he goes back through there, it's way below zero, and everybody in hell is just so cold and miserable and shaking so much they can't even complain. They don't have the strength to complain. And he gets in there, Ole and Sven, and there they are. They got their parkas back on and their big hat and their mittens, and they're just jumping around, high-fiving each other and so happy, And the devil says, "What in the world's the matter with you two?" He says, "I turn it up so hot, that it's incredibly horrible." He says, "I turn the heat off, it's frozen up down here." He says, "Just exactly what's the matter with you two? Why are you so happy?" "Well," says Ole, "we woke up this morning and it's the coldest everything." He says, "and hell is frozen over." And he says, "We're so happy because we know the Vikings are bound to win the Super Bowl."